So good morning, and this is the Philadelphia College Prep Roundtable Financial Aid presentation workshop series. We are happy to have both Kelly, Katrina, Katrina Kelly, I always give her last name first, Katrina Kelly from Westchester University, and also from the Pennsylvania Pennsylvania Association for Student Financial Aid Administrators. We also have Keri. Keri, pronounce your last name for us.
It's Neidig.
Keri Neidig and Darwin Morency from Sallie Mae, who are going to lead us in this presentation. So you guys take it away. I'm going to pin you up and also going to give you that ability. But thank you very much and take it off. Take it away.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Tom, for that intro. And again, welcome to everyone for joining us for this important dialogue that we're going to have, really specifically related to understanding financial aid offers. This is actually part two of a conversation we started actually in the early of the month, but it was so robust and there was a lot of insight and information that needed to be had that we're extending it to a part two. So we're coming back again to really have this other session. As Tom mentioned, Keri, myself, and Katrina are all here to really kind of have this conversation and this dialogue. So today we'll again continue the conversation that I mentioned as it relates to financial aid offers, really identify some key terms that are specific and important, and then help you by providing some important information to go about assisting your students and decoding what these offers are all about. So before I hand it off to Keri so that we can get started, I really just want to provide a brief commercial as it relates to our Bridging the Dream scholarship program. This actually started, or the window opened on February 6th, and it will remain open till March 27th. And this is actually a collaborative partnership with the Thurgood Marshall Scholarship Fund, where we will award 75 $10,000 scholarships to high school seniors over the next 3 years, totaling about $750,000. And this is part of, again, a commitment that we, Sallie Mae, have made of about $3 million to help students from all backgrounds pursue higher education. So to date, we've provided 600 scholarships totaling $2 million. And so what we'd like for you to do is, as you can see the link here on the screen, share with the students that you have in your sphere of influence. As you can imagine, this $10,000 goes a long way to helping them not only have access to college, but completing college. So that said, thank you for this brief window for that commercial. Keri, I'll hand it over to you so we can get started and have a lively discussion today.
Certainly, thanks, Darwin. And we can put this direct link in the chat so that folks have it for the actual scholarship itself. And really just sort of, and I took myself off of video so you don't see me toggling between multiple screens in my head, like going back and forth between both. So I thank you for your patience as we kind of get going. And as we get started here, if you do have any questions, please feel free to use the chat. We're going to go through a couple pieces of information specifically related to covering the remaining balance. And we will do a recap of kind of reminders of, starting with that free money on the financial aid offer, right? Grants and scholarships, federal student loans, any other pieces of or sources of funding rather that a school may provide on that offer letter. But then what happens, right? What next? And that's really where we kind of ended the last time we spoke earlier this month. And so we'll kind of jump in, share a couple pieces of information with regards to covering that remaining gap. And then what we're going to do, and this is where I'm going to ask for everyone's patience, because it is going to, we want to actually just show you two live 23-24 financial aid offers for a Pennsylvania resident, one from a public institution and one from a private, and really do the comparison, right? Like, how can we take these offers and showcase what the bottom line is for that student for that year? At that point, please, again, use the chat. If you do want to come off a mute as we get to that part, raise your hand, please, so we can kind of keep it kind of watching our time, but we do want to get to your questions and make sure that we're providing the right guidance. So just quickly, just giving some more information about the various ways to cover that remaining balance, what you see here on the screen. And so again, we're starting with that free money first, even within this slide. And in this case, it's outside scholarships. So we talked about this a little bit the last time, but essentially outside scholarships, that's free money awarded by an outside party. It can be based on things like academic achievement, financial need, community involvement, talent, skill, school activities, a whole wealth of affiliations, religious affiliation. Think your local Boys and Girls Club, the student may volunteer in the community, and that community organization may have a scholarship, those kinds of things. Now, a great place to start in seeking outside scholarships really is their school counselor. They're very connected. Those of you on the phone may be also very connected to some local scholarships within the community. And it's very important for students to talk to or ask their financial aid offices at the respective schools that they are applying to, that they're interested in, to determine whether or not an outside scholarship will be added on to the existing financial aid offer, or if it will change any of the pieces that were on their original financial aid offer. And so,
Quick question.
oh yeah, sorry, go ahead, John.
Well, so I was going to ask, Katrina, so we have you here. Do you have any good resources that, students could use to find those additional outside resources?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different scholarship websites like FastWeb, which is a scholarship search engine, Unigo, another scholarship search engine, scholarships.com, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. A lot of those places, even just Googling scholarships, can give you a list of scholarships. One of the biggest things that I tell students, parents, pretty much anybody who will listen, is that one, you should never have to pay to do a scholarship application. It should never ask for a credit card or any kind of that information. And two, one of the issues that students make when they are applying for scholarships is they stop once they have been accepted to a university. Students will do all of these applications for scholarships leading up to getting in their freshman year and then never touch scholarships again. That is something that should be continually done throughout their academic career.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's really great advice, Katrina. Thank you for that. We're not going to talk a lot about that second bullet, but certainly, the next step in covering the balance after those outside scholarships is any other savings, whether that be a college savings account like a 529 plan or other savings that the family may have set aside for education. Once those pieces are considered, and we will talk about tuition payment plans, what that means, what they are, and then finally those additional educational loans that are provided, whether it be from the private sector, banks, credit unions, other lending agencies, or the federal government through the federal Parent Plus loan. And so we will dig into that in just a moment. And again, another search engine, and again, to Kat's point, we can make sure that several of these scholarship tools are provided so that you have resources. Sallie Mae also offers a free scholarship search that is available to, the scholarships range from undergraduate to graduate school. So to Kat's point, it's important to not stop searching for scholarships once they're accepted in that undergraduate education. Scholarships do exist for grad students as well. So again, this is another database, another type of, it's essentially an aggregator that allows a student to create a profile that is unique to them. And then this particular aggregator will then match students to scholarships that match their profile.
So quick question, again, this is some great information as it relates to scholarships. Can you provide a little bit or dispel some of that misconception that scholarships are really for top students and star athletes? And is there really benefit in creating that profile as they use these aggregators to help them, really narrow down or identify those key scholarships that will help them be successful?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Two really great questions. We do find in some of the research that Sallie may conduct, and it probably won't be surprising to anybody on this call, there's a fair number, and I believe the number, if I'm not mistaken, is 44% of families did not use scholarships for the most recent academic year that was completed, so the 21-22 academic year, to cover the cost of education. And the main reason provided was there's really two. Students, they may not believe that scholarship is available to them because, to your point, Darwin, they're not, let's say, quote, top student or, top athlete within their high school. And so they simply they don't think there's anything for them. The other reason is there is a time commitment, right? And students are going to evaluate the time that they take to search and to apply for outside scholarships with the perceived, let's say, chance of winning one. And so it is important. And I do think and personally, I actually am signed up for this particular Sallie Mae search. My son is a senior in high school. I created a profile as the parent of a senior. I also have a college freshman, so I can, as a parent, kind of help search for things. They also have their own student accounts. That profile is really important because it is unique to that student. So think things like, again, we talked about volunteering. There are scholarships for students that volunteer in their community, community service. There could be scholarships for, religious affiliations and, aspiring puppeteers. I mean, these really do exist. And so the more detailed the profile, the better that these types of aggregators can link students to scholarships that aren't, let's say, quote, just for the top student or top athlete. Hopefully that answers your question, Darwin.
Yep, thank you.
Awesome. And Kat, do you have any other tips or anything before we jump into payment plans to help folks be scholarship advocates for students?
The other thing I would say is that when applying for scholarships, don't discount the small ones. So a lot of times we'll see like really large scholarship amounts, and students will flock to those and ignore the little small ones like that are like 500 or 1,000 or something like that. But generally the smaller scholarships are stackable, meaning that if they are awarded two $500 scholarships, they can stack on the bill. They're usually less competitive because not many students are applying for those smaller scholarships. So I always say don't discount the small ones when looking at scholarships.
I love that tip. So here we'll just touch on tuition payment plans. So schools, so colleges and universities will often offer tuition payment plans to help cover any remaining balance. Now, these plans allow a family to spread their payments out over a period of time, typically either for the full year, 10 months, or by semester. Now, the actual way the plans are set up, there's typically a small enrollment fee. There could be additional fees or charges, and they do vary by school. And so again, checking with that institution regarding their particular plans would be important. And it is also important to keep in mind that for parents especially, the costs that are provided to that student today. So you think about what as a parent, right? Again, I'm just gonna put myself out there kind of going through this with my own kids. What am I paying for today that perhaps in my monthly budget is going to shift when my son goes to college, right? That's the kind of mentality that I can say, okay, well, maybe that amount is what I can put toward that monthly payment plan. So it's just a way for me to budget sort of the dollars that I'm spending today to cut down on the amount that I may need to borrow to fill the total gap.
Well, Keri, I just want to bring in Katrina on this because I have a question here. So what happens again if a parent is pursuing, let's say, a payment plan? Is this an all or nothing obligation, or can they do part of the balance with the payment plan and the other part with, let's say, a private loan or a plus loan to really kind of offset the cost here or that outstanding balance, right? So what options do they have as it relates to not only using the payment plan, can they bring other pieces into play to meet that obligation?
Absolutely. So students and parents have the option to do either a full payment plan, a partial payment plan in combination with a private loan, in combination with a parent plus loan. And it's important to know that most schools do billing per semester. So in the fall, if the parent decides to do a payment plan, that doesn't mean that in the spring they also have to do a payment plan. Or if they want to, if parents are separated or divorced, you know, one parent could pay for the bill in the fall, one parent could pay for the bill in the spring. Most schools, their bursar's office or billing office will work with students. And it can be a combination of payment plans, just a regular lump sum payment with a plus loan or a private loan, or however people want to do it.
Perfect. So the takeaway is this flexibility. Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic. And so just taking a moment to look at the additional educational loan options. I will caveat, we do not have information in here about other ways to pay outside of education loans. Again, there could be those 529 college savings plans. A family may have an option. You know, there are various ways or other types of borrowing that a family may consider, but for the purposes of these particular loans, whether they be private student loans, private parent loans, or federal direct plus loans, these are built with education in mind. And I say that because it's important to understand the difference between taking a loan that may provide the opportunity for a family to defer payments or make small payments along the way versus perhaps borrowing against my 401k or you know, taking out a home equity loan if I own a home, right? Those are not built for education. And so for purposes of our discussion, we really just wanted to focus on these specific types. And so quickly, and I'm not going to read the slide to you, but you have your private student loan and private parent loan. These are made by or offered by banks, credit unions, other lending agencies that either the student is the primary borrower, and many times in that case, they may have a, you know, third party creditworthy cosigner that helps them obtain that loan. These are credit-based loans. Same with a private parent loan. This is where the parent or other creditworthy individual wishes to borrow on behalf of the student. In each one of these options, there are opportunities typically for student and family to defer those costs. They can start paying many times right away. They can make small payments. You know, these will vary by provider. And then, of course, your federal direct plus loan, these are available by the Department of Education. It is the parent is the primary borrower. Repayment typically starts right away, but again, they also can elect to defer payments while the student's in school. But in all of these instances, interest will accrue during the time that the loan is taken out. So as soon as that money is released to the school, interest starts to accrue on each one of these loans. And we wanted to put these together because we will provide a PDF of these slides that has a lot more detail with regards to the types of loans, but digging into that parent plus loan, again, loans are taken out by the parent. They can cover the entire financing gap, so up to the 100% of the cost of attendance. So again, remember that's your direct fees. So the fees that are billed by the institution, as well as any indirect costs like books, like personal expenses and transportation. This loan can cover up to 100% of that cost minus any other financial aid that the student is receiving. Now, the parent is the borrower on this loan for the life of the loan, but again, they can request deferment of payments while the student is in school.
So, Keri, quickly, question. So, is this similar to, you know, the federal direct sub and unsub where if you fill out the FAFSA, then you're automatically approved for this loan program, or are there other nuances involved?
Yeah, that's a good question. So those direct unsubsidized and subsidized loans, those are student loans. We will actually look at them on the financial aid offer in just a moment. Those loans are available to U.S. citizens. To your point, you file a FAFSA as a student, you are eligible typically just for that loan. There is no approval process. Now, the federal direct or the parent loan, the PLUS loan, there is credit history, there are considerations. So a parent would need to apply. There is a credit check. They are looking for adverse credit history in order to determine if the parent is eligible to borrow this money. We did put the interest rate and fee you see in that little chart. This is a fixed rate loan. It is determined every July 1st based on current market rates. So we're just giving you, we don't know what next year's is. We don't know what the 23-24 interest rates will be, but you can see today they're 7.54%. And there is an origination fee of 4.228% on a PLUS loan. And then similarly, we'll just kind of group private student loans. But again, remember, there are private loans that a parent or private parent loan that may exist as well. These are funded again by banks and credit unions. These are not funded by the federal government. A FAFSA is not required for these types of loans, and they are credit-based. Now, the repayment period, the terms, the interest rates, the fees, they do vary by provider. You can see at the very bottom, APRs can range anywhere, and these do vary. I will caveat, we're in a rising rate environment. I think we've all seen this. So it's really important for families to understand the cost, the terms of each individual program. And many times your financial aid office at individual schools can provide you some guidance, perhaps some general comparison, places to compare different products so that families can choose what makes sense for them.
So just to give a little bit of a clarity here, just looking at the screen, it mentions, cosigner may be necessary. Can you kind of give a little bit of a color? What exactly is the cosigner? Would that be a parent only, or can you, kind of give more color or insight into, are they responsible for the life of the loan, similar to that of a PLUS loan? Can you just talk a little bit about that so that, obviously, we can have that understanding?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So a cosigner is any responsible third party. So it can be a parent, a grandparent, aunt, uncle, your neighbor, your best friend. Now the cosigner is somebody who typically helps a student secure the loan. They are legally obligated. They are a co-borrower. So think cosigner is another word for co-borrower. Now, typically, the student is the primary borrower, and so the cosigner is responsible if the student fails to meet their obligation of payments. And again, there are instances where a cosigner may be released by a lender after the student meets a certain requirement. So again, that does vary by lender. So the short answer is the cosigner may not always be attached for the life of the loan, depending upon the offerings that lender provides, and if the student met those requirements to release their cosigner. Hopefully that made sense. And Kat, quickly before because I think what we'd like to do now is really jump in and look at some award offers. Katrina, do you have anything else you want to add, or is there anything else in the chat? I apologize, it's hard for me to see that when I'm sharing my screen, and we want to address before we look at an offer?
Yeah, so while we're on the subject of loans, there's a question. Many college access community practitioners service students who do not have traditional parent involvement in their lives. What can they do if they're looking to apply for a private loan but don't have a parent?
That's a tricky question. So, because traditionally, from a private loan perspective, that because they are credit-based, now again, that doesn't mean that a student, as long as the student in Pennsylvania, the age of majority is 18, a lender cannot require a cosigner unless the student is under the age of 18. So that's first. If you are working with an international student, so a non-US citizen or perhaps a DACA student, many lenders will also require a cosigner. Okay, so those are the two instances where a cosigner may be, I say required, and you can't see me using air quotes, my fingers. Now, for the student that's at least the age of 18, they can apply on their own. It will depend because, again, it's credit-based if they have established credit. If they do not, that's where a cosigner comes into play. When I worked in financial aid, and Katrina, you probably can add some color and keep me honest here. I mean, this, unfortunately, it comes up, right? A student may not have a cosigner. They may not have a credit-worthy cosigner, even if they have a traditional, we'll call it more traditional households. And in those instances, it is harder to secure a private loan, but perhaps sometimes it's easier with regards to those cosigner release offerings. Many times if a cosigner understands there is, we'll call it light at the end of the tunnel, and that they can be released so they're not attached to it for the life of the loan, that may help a student secure a cosigner. There are very limited opportunities. There could be institutional loan opportunities. So I guess what I would say is the key is to talk to your financial aid office in those instances. They may be aware of an institutional program that can help the student, because your more traditional private student loans, unless the student has established credit, they may need a cosigner to increase their chance for approval. Kat, do you have other thoughts, or Darwin?
Yeah, I would just add that to also reiterate Keri's point that she made, that cosigners don't have to be parents, either biological or adoptive. A cosigner can be anybody who is willing and creditworthy to cosign the loan. So it could be a grandparent, it could be an aunt, uncle, you know, whoever wants to cosign that loan for a private loan. I would also, I agree with Keri that they should talk to their financial aid office at whichever school they're planning on going to. Because if they're in a unique situation where they don't have parent involvement, they may be eligible to be an independent student for federal financial aid purposes. And as we talked about in our first part of this session, was that independent students have a different limit of federal loans. So traditional students, dependent students that are freshmen have a federal loan limit of $5,500 for the year, whereas an independent student has a loan limit for the freshman year of $9,500. So that does help in those situations. So, but again, each student's financial aid is very unique, so they need to talk to their financial aid advisor. The other question that we got is, can parents refinance a Parent Plus loan to obtain a lower interest rate or a longer repayment term if needed? So yes, Parent Plus loans can be refinanced through a private loan lender. Just know that if they do that, then they do lose some of the amenities that come with the Parent Plus loan, because they would be going with a new private loan lender.
Excellent. So what I'm going to attempt to do here is we're going to essentially, there's a screenshot of this, one example, right, of one of many opportunities to kind of help. It's a tool, right? And actually what I'm going to do is pull up this financial aid offer comparison sheet, and let's just kind of walk through two real financial aid offers. I'm actually also in the process of helping a few, right? This is the benefit of having high school seniors. You start not only doing this for yourself, but, you know, helping the neighborhood get through this process. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment and pull up additional screens so that we can actually take a look at what these financial aid offers look like. And so let me see here. And so here, hopefully everybody can see my screen. So what I did was, we have this financial aid comparison. So I attempted, and actually, I'm not sure if this is actually going to let me do this. I may need to toggle, and I do apologize for that, between screens, but basically this is a blank sheet. This allows a student, or, again, anybody that's helping a student compare offers, to actually type in, right, numbers in here, and it will actually have a running calculation at the bottom. Now, I will caveat, we are in the process of making some adjustments. I can tell you, when I started going through this with my son, I realized, man, I'd really like to be able to change this from school one to whatever the school is. It becomes very difficult when you fill out all these columns to remember which column is for which school. So that is an enhancement, so we'll get that updated for everyone. But so essentially what we're going to do is, I'm actually going to pull up a sample offer. Can somebody let me know, can you see this screen where it says Wilkes on the right?
We cannot, Keri.
Oh, I'm so excited. All right, so this particular
Keri, we can't.
Oh no, it's only showing the comparing offer.
Yeah.
At a time. Okay. This is going to be fun. So I apologize, everyone. I was hoping I could just share my whole entire screen instead of individual windows, but it looks like it's forcing me to share individual windows. So that's okay. We'll do that. Okay. Can we see it now?
Yes.
Awesome. So I will apologize if the left-hand side is a little bit cut off when this screenshot was taken. So we'll kind of walk through it. But this is, so again, we'll do a private and a public institution. And what you see here is, you have the academic year listed at the top. This particular student is a Pennsylvania resident. They are going to live on campus. And so that is provided within the assumptions, right, when we get to the cost. And the way this particular school sectioned information, they have their costs at the bottom, their direct costs. You have your free money at the top, and you have loans kind of in the middle. So in kind of thinking about starting with cost, we have, and I will display this, but basically you have your direct costs, tuition and fees. This says room and board. You will see terms like housing and meals. And then in this instance, they also added in a one-time matriculation fee. So the total direct costs, these are fees that are paid directly to the school for the student to live on campus, be a full-time student, is broken down fall and spring, and you have your total of $58,435. Now, when helping students compare offers, we also want to make sure that they are comparing total cost. And that means your direct fees, which were provided, as well as indirect fees. And so with that institution, the direct will say tuition and fees for that school, and I will add the matriculation fee into that, was $42,421. Their room and board costs was $16,014. Now you'll actually notice, if you remember, so this is at $58,435. That was the same number that was on that financial aid offer. Those indirect fees, books, supplies, personal expenses, transportation, those are all part of the financial aid cost of attendance, the calculation that's used for that student. Unfortunately, the school did not provide that information. And so what I needed to do was go to the website. Please tell me that it's at least flipping my screen. Can you see the website here?
Yes, we can.
Oh, that's good. The school, again, they have it listed, their direct costs for resident, for commuter, for an off-campus student, which means you're living in your own apartment. Again, remember, the offer will actually be based on the housing status that the student provided to the school. So we're going to stick with that resident on the left-hand side. This we already know. That's what was on that letter. What was not provided were the indirect costs. Now, these are estimated, right? Every school will estimate cost, but you can see there's books, supplies, we have personal expenses, transportation, they have loan fees added in here. So the total indirect cost of $4,658 is additional cost that the student may incur. Again, some students may not have as high of a transportation cost, for instance. Some may have lower, but remember, these are averages. So when we're helping a student compare an offer, we're going to put in those costs here in our indirect costs. So we had to do a little bit of homework, right? We had to look at the website to actually pull it down. So $1,600 for books and supplies and $3,058 for like everything else. So now you can see really my total cost is $63,000, just almost $63,100. Now on the offer itself, we have grants, we have scholarships, we have all different types of financial aid. So when we look at the free money, you can see the breakdown. Scholarships are broken down with the word scholarships. This is a Dean Scholarship. It's a merit-based award of $18,000. There's a Lehigh Valley Loyal Scholarship, which is another award of $2,000. And then we have some grants. The federal Pell Grant, the Pennsylvania State Grant, as well as an institutional need-based grant. So the total amount of free money that this student is receiving is $33,193. And so when we jump back into our Nifty, if I can find it, find the right screen. So we're just going to put that in. So the student received their grants, they received their scholarships, and you can see that $33,193 is totaled here. And now we have the remaining gap. After all the free money, the student will owe roughly $30,000 for this institution. I'm going to skip the loan piece. We can add that in later because loans, while they're on the financial aid offer, the federal student loans, subsidized and unsubsidized, are a type of financial aid that will come on that offer. It is still money that needs to be repaid. So for the purposes of helping a student understand total cost, I'm going to leave that blank. And then we're going to move over into the example of a public institution with a very similar profile. We actually utilize a scenario in which a student would have the same federal Pell Grant, which means the EFC is the same. So hopefully that makes sense. Now,
Keri, I just want to cut in real quick.
Yeah.
We're also not putting work study on here yet because work study funds do not get applied to the university bill. Students only get the work study funds if they were to get a job on campus, and they can earn up to that amount in the form of a biweekly paycheck. So if students see work study funds on their award letters, it does not actually go towards the university bill. If they use their paycheck to pay their bill, that's entirely up to them, but it doesn't automatically come off.
thank you. And that's really important. Can we see the public institution? And I'm trying to make this window bigger, but of course, can everybody see that?
Yes, we can see it,
Yes.
Keri.
Okay. So this is an example, and Katrina, if you want to walk through this, I mean, you certainly, I don't want to, because this is a Westchester University example. So again, just another view of a public institution in our state. Do you want to talk through maybe and what the difference is here?
Sure. So at a lot of the public institutions or even private institutions, there may be different types of housing that's available. So here at Westchester, there's USH affiliated housing and WCU owned housing. The difference, I mean, this is a PDF that you can toggle through, but the difference is typically whether it's a suite style or a traditional dorm style. So there are different types of charges associated with that. That's why the annual charges, that's usually can be split. Some award letters, you might even see residence costs, and then commuter costs, and then off-campus estimated costs, things like that. So those are the estimated charges. Like the letter in Wilkes, it doesn't show the indirect costs associated with going to school. And then there's the gift aid, which shows the scholarships and grants. So the gift aid is the aid that does not need to be repaid. And then you'll see the loans. Now, and then the loans are obviously, they do need to be repaid. So you'll see the total annual financial aid at the bottom. And then you can see the out-of-pocket costs. So there's the out-of-pocket costs after gift aid, which is all of the free money, and then out-of-pocket costs after all aid, which includes the federal loans.
Thank you, Kat. And I will actually just drop those numbers right into our comparison so that we can take a look here. So again, we have, let's see if I get this right. I use the Westchester University affiliated housing cost of attendance. So again, depending on the housing, to Kat's point, that the student chooses, right? This room and board number could be different. This housing and meal number could be different based on what that is. And in order to find these indirect costs, I also went directly to the institution's website. They do provide their total cost of attendance based on in and out of state students. And so that's where I grabbed books and supplies of $1,200. You have your transportation and your personal expenses. Okay, so when, again, even though it's not on that offer, it's important for students to understand they can receive financial aid up to the total cost of attendance, which includes those other types of financial aid. And then you can see we have that total cost of attendance, which is very different, right? $26,159 versus $63,093 for the two schools. Now, grants at this particular school, we're going to take the Pennsylvania State grant and the federal Pell grant. I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, totaled $8,633. Katrina, you can help me from going back to another screen. Was there an additional scholarship or other gift aid on that? I think there was a 400, maybe.
I'm sorry, 500. Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted.
Oh, no, that's okay. I just want to make sure I got it right. So now we can see after the free money for both schools, you consider the top cost of attendance, all in cost, minus the gift aid, the free money, the grants and scholarships. You can see at school A, the private institution was just under $30,000 gap. And at the public, you have a $17,000 gap. And that's when you start building in, okay, well, now what, right? Maybe there are, each school offered the student their full availability of the federal direct student loan, 35. Yes.
For the grants for the public school, it's 8583.
Oh, okay, sorry. Thank you. What happens when I'm doing quick math, it doesn't always work, right? Now when if the student chooses to accept the federal direct student loans, you can see it's further reducing the remaining gap. And that's when you would start talking about things like perhaps other types of student loans, the tuition payment plans, all of those things that we went through today is really what will help the student cover these remaining costs. I hope that made sense. I know it's a little clunky and I apologize for having to toggle between screens, and I see that there are some questions in the chat. So I'd really like to just kind of open it up. This is just an example of a way to help a student. You can use spreadsheets, you can use write paper and pen. This is just a way to sort of help them compare offers. They may look different, they may have very different numbers, but to really understand that while the free money from school A was much higher than school B, the total cost for school B ultimately was less.
Keri, one of the questions is, how can the state grant and the Pell Grant can they change based off of the school? So when we
go ahead.
look at this student, they have a federal Pell Grant of $4,245 at both schools because the federal aid doesn't change based off of the FAFSA and that EFC, but the PA state grant can change based off of the school because the PA state grant, if you remember back to our last presentation, the PA state grant is based in part off of FAFSA information, but also in part off of the cost of the school. So you'll see at the public institution, the PA state grant total for the year is $4,388. And then at Wilkes, I don't know if Keri can toggle to the other school. The PA state grant is $5,098 because the costs associated with Wilkes are different than the costs associated with Westchester. So the Pennsylvania state grant is increased at Wilkes, whereas it is lower at Westchester.
Great question. Any other questions? Does anybody have, and actually let me.
There is another question in the chat that was from earlier, which is, when is a scholarship considered taxable?
Ooh, this is a tough one. And I always caveat that I am not a tax advisor. So I would always, I do this when I talk to families all the time, is to consult an actual tax professional. Because I don't want to provide the wrong guidance. I don't know, Darwin, do you have any additional insight, or Katrina, of course, we feel comfortable? Yeah.
So, I mean, I tell parents and students this too. I am not a tax professional, and they should always talk to their tax consultant when they are filing their taxes related to higher education. But the general rule is, according to the IRS, that if you receive a scholarship or grant or any amounts, some or all can be tax-free if the student receives the scholarship and it is used to pay for tuition fees required for enrollments or attendance at the institution, for books, fees, supplies, equipment required for courses at the institution. It can be considered taxable if the scholarship or grant is used for incidental expenses such as room, board, travel, or optional equipment. Also, it gets tricky when it comes to fellowships like graduate assistantships or things like that. So that does vary. And I would recommend that students reach out to a tax professional when it comes to those things.
Excellent. I actually was able to pull up the chat now. Oh, sorry, Darwin, please.
I was going to say there's another question that just popped up. It's specifically related to the FAFSA, right? So it speaks about the latest communication indicates that the proposed changes will be delayed. And so if this is the case, what changes will move forward and which will be delayed?
This is a tough question to answer. Right now, what we understand, so FAFSA today is available October 1st of the student's senior year in high school. Now, there are changes to the FAFSA starting for the 24-25 academic year. There has been some discussion by the Department of Education that they may not be ready, for lack of a better way to say it, to have the updated form available for October 1st. I believe that January 1st is the legal obligation of the Department of Education to have the FAFSA available, although it has been October 1st. You know, they've been able to do it earlier in the last few years. So stay tuned as far as the timing. From what I understand, and Katrina, maybe you can speak to this a little bit more. From what I understand, everything that I've read so far, if there will be a delay, it's a delay for the entire FAFSA application, not just pieces of it.
Yeah, so it's for the entire FAFSA application. The Department of Education is not, all of the things that we have been receiving is they're not ready to commit to the 10-1 for the 24-25 FAFSA being ready, but it is a statute requirement that it's ready by January 1st. So I have been telling people to still look out for it in October, if that's something that they're able to do, but it will absolutely should be ready by January 1st.
Great question.
Scrolling through the chat here and still looking for any outstanding questions. I believe we've gotten all of them.
Look at that, with time to spare. I mean, certainly if anybody has additional questions, we hope this is helpful to you. I saw there's a lot of great scholarships in the chat, so please make sure that you check that out. Yeah, I mean, Tom, we'll go back to our fearless leader here. If there's anything else that we'd like to kind of touch on, or we'll certainly be able to hang out too. And Candace, hi Candace.
Well, yes, first off, I want to appreciate you guys hanging in there with us and going through this process. Wanting to let everyone know that this webinar, along with the previous webinar, will be accessible. It is not up on the website. It will not be up on the website as of yet, but we will have the link to it. So we'll send out everyone who's on this call today and the previous presentation will get the link sent to you in an email message. So you will get that. I would also use this moment in time, this last 5 minutes, to allow for anyone to have some pressing personal work issues and working with students on financial aid award letter process. And particularly, I tried to push the question out to ask from an advisement standpoint. A lot of times when we're doing these presentations, we're pushing it out as if we're talking to the general public and not from an advisor's lens. So if you have a question from like a question of how would you advise a student to do blah, 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 or how would you advise a parent to do blah, blah, blah. This is that time to ask that. This is your forum for your issues that helps the students you serve. Candace, go ahead.
I'm just going to get us started. First of all, Keri, Katrina, Darwin, that was great. I kind of like the in the moment filling out the form, like demonstrating. That's good. Hi, because there's a lot of friends and wonderful colleagues in this room that I actually haven't talked to in a while. So hi. Real quick. Well, maybe not so quick. So question one is, what's your sense, Katrina, it's sort of a question that's more directed to you, but all of you professionally, what's your sense of financial aid offices who can and or will actively help students with FAFSA? And so, you know, it's great when schools open and we've got a lot of college access people who can help with FAFSA along the way, but at some point it starts to get really murky, timing is weird. I've been asking this question, just trying to get a sense. So that's part one. And then part two is give us your sense of some of the biggest errors, right, that you're seeing. So there's a lot of that stuff that's on the internet. Some of it's legit. Some people are just repeating what they've heard on their websites and blogs. But what's your sense from a professional standpoint of those big errors that are causing delays?
So in terms of filling out the FAFSA and needing assistance with that, a lot of the universities do financial aid nights where, you know, if you're close to a university, you can always reach out to the financial aid office there and someone will come for the most part. I know, for example, tomorrow I'm going to a high school near me to do a FAFSA filing night with students and parents. So we do those things a lot professionally. A lot of the financial aid administrators in our state, and I'm sure it's the same in other states as well, well, we'll do things like that. As far as common errors I see on FAFSAs that we receive, number one being the difference between an independent and a dependent student. So in the first of this series, which I did was how to fill out the FAFSA, I explained the difference between a dependent and an independent student. So the most common thing I get is students coming to me and saying, well, my parents aren't helping me pay for college, so I should be an independent student. While I sympathize with that, unfortunately, according to the Department of Education, that does not make them an independent student. And parents still need to be on the FAFSA, even if they are not financially supporting, either by willingness or by capability, to financially support the student while in school. The student would still be required to be a dependent student. There are specific instances for what makes an independent student. And I'm sure this is a perfect shout out for Tom to tell you to go watch that webinar on where I explain in detail the difference between dependent and independent student.
I just want to add one quick thing. And actually, maybe this is more of a question for Katrina as well, because I haven't worked in a financial aid office for a few years, so I don't want to, misspeak here, but do you find, so students and families, and I'm sure you talked about it in that very first piece of this series, if they utilize the IRS retrieval opportunity, so when they're filling out their FAFSA, they have the opportunity to say, yes, link all of my financial information from my taxes, right? And it automatically feeds over. Do you find there are less errors as a result of that? Like, what would your advice be for a family doing this the first time?
Yeah, so I always recommend using the data retrieval tool when it comes to filling out the FAFSA. Now, I will make this caveat because we talked about FAFSA simplification and the updated FAFSA for 24-25. That data retrieval tool aspect is going away. It's going to be in something different in its place. So this is specifically for the 23-24 FAFSA. I'm sure next year we'll have to do a whole new series on how to do the FAFSA because there's a lot of changes that are happening. But for this specific year, so the 23, either it's 22-23 or the 23-24 FAFSA, using the data retrieval tool does lessen the error of inputting incorrect AGI, because we get that a lot too, is when students put in the numbers, they'll put AGI, their taxes paid, and their income as the exact same number. And that error creates a rejected FAFSA, meaning that financial aid offices cannot package for financial aid, so we have to request additional information.
I did see Candace's reaction to the, it is going to be, it's challenging, right? It is
Very. That, I mean, I'm talking with students and parents and doing school counselor professional developments, and I'm saying disclaimers after I say everything. It's, and I will say just a quick survey of financial aid professionals last late summer. Their number, and it was 4 of them in a row that said this, their errors that they saw was that the parent was answering questions for themselves in the application. That was their number one problem, and it causes delays because they are not the applicant. Student is the applicant, but parents have a hard time letting go.
I think one of the questions in the chat is, what is your opinion on students purchasing tuition insurance? So I'm not as familiar with tuition insurance aside from like health insurance. I'm not sure if that's what the person is asking about, but some schools offer to purchase health insurance. Some schools it's a requirement. Some schools don't offer it at all. So I've worked at both. Westchester doesn't have health insurance for students to purchase. And I worked at a school, this is pandemic many moons ago that required students to have health insurance. So if the student couldn't provide proof of outside health insurance, then they had to purchase.
Angelica, did that get to your question?
I was going to say there are tuition insurance opportunities in which a family can purchase insurance should there be and I think we saw an uptick in this, not just with COVID, but there could be, job loss. There's different reasons that may cause a family who perhaps had a plan, right, to cover that cost of the student's education. They have an opportunity to essentially purchase an insurance that would cover, it would kick in if certain things happen. So I don't want to speak specifically because every one of those policies is a little bit different. Many times it's offered in partnership with the institution. We'll say, hey, we work with XYZ institution. You can purchase tuition insurance if you wish. So they may be underwritten differently, right? When you kind of have the whole institution behind it versus I'm Keri Neidig going online trying to find tuition insurance. So again, check with typically that may, it could come out of financial aid. It could also be your bursar's office that has information about that. I don't want to provide any guidance as to whether or not they're a good idea or not. Certainly families, it's just like any other insurance, right? Some families like to be overinsured and make sure everything is covered and buttoned up. And some may have more, I guess, risk tolerance. Is that the way?
So we're at 11:59. So I do want to get underneath that. Angelica actually works at Cabrini University rather. So Angelica, are you speaking because?
Yeah, Keri did answer the question.
Okay.
I recently learned that we do have we offer tuition insurance, and I'm just trying to decide if that's something that I can recommend to students, because I've seen students who have had to stop out in the middle of semester and have been having to manage and pay for large amounts of tuition because they lost financial aid depending on when they withdraw. So I'm just thinking, like, if that's something that we should advocate for our students to look into. I know it's an additional cost, but oftentimes our students are the ones that have unexpected situations that arise that cause them to be strapped should they decide to stop out in the middle of the semester. So I just wanted the opinion.
Yeah, and you know what, Angelica, love you. I'm gonna put on my parent hat and then on top my professional hat. So my son's school offers tuition insurance. They put it on the bill, and it's my job to take it off. So that's a forewarning for professionals to have students and parents look at the bill. Two, though, it's like any other insurance. You really have to read what it covers and under what circumstances and the timing, because there are so many caveats that have to be checked that you can't just automatically assume that a student's going to be protected, should something happen with their tuition. You really have to read through the policy. And it's like, are you going to purchase airline insurance or any other kind of insurance? So just
that's exactly what I wanted to know, because I want to make sure that if I am going to advise anyone that it's I'm able to give them the correct information. Thank you, Candace. Love you too.
Miss you. Love you.
We want to thank our colleagues for coming on from PASFA, from Sallie Mae, and all the other colleagues who are help putting this series together. There will be more additional series coming up as the season moves along, so look out for more information. Thank you all for joining us today, and have a wonderful rest of the week. We will see you real soon. Thank you, everyone.